I'm a female, and this happened to me when I was in middle school. I'm about to go off to college this August to Tulane University, but before I do that, I need to get this story off my chest because I want to let kids know who are still in the 5th grade that middle school can be the most troubling years of your life. I was in 6th grade and I went to school at Columbia Grammar/Prep School in New York, which is one of the oldest schools in the country. I'm still enrolled in that school to this day and have been since kindergarten. I've pretty much befriended everyone in my grade throughout all of the years. Only this one guy made me question why I came to the school in the first place. His name was Jack, and he was new to the school that year. At first, he seemed well-mannered, but you can't always underthink. He would sit next to me in all of my classes and would sit at the same table I was at lunch. I wasn't too sure if he liked me or that he just wanted to be friends with me, but I wasn't too worried about it. After some time, he had asked me for my number, and I gave it to him thinking he wouldn't be creepy over text. He was normal at first, talking about school-related stuff and current events that are going on in the world. The texts and calls were normal at first, but one day he had asked me out. To be real, I wasn't surprised because I expected him to do so at some point, but I didn't know when. I wasn't offended when he asked me, but I politely declined his invitation. After I did this, he ended the call right away. I hope that I didn't hurt his feelings, but everyone takes things in different ways. I texted him saying, "I'm sorry, Jack, I just don't like you like that." He didn't respond the whole night. The next day then came and we had school. When I saw Jack in school, I tried to talk to him hoping to sort things out, but he would just ignore me and walk away. I must have really hurt his feelings, but I was still not going to give him what he wanted. The rest of the day went by and he would continuously avoid me. I went home that night on the school bus and I noticed that Jack was staring at me from outside when I was sitting down. I decided right there that I will no longer try to talk to him until he apologizes and to let me know that he will move on from this. The next day then came. During the hours in the early morning, I got told from one of my teachers that I had to go to the headmaster's office. I was so confused because what could I have possibly done this time? I got to the office and the headmaster told me to have a seat. I listened to him and asked him if I was in trouble. He said, "I was informed that you've been cyberbullying Alex and Jason. Those were 2 kids in my grade." I was so bewildered by hearing this, and I defended myself and assured him that I did not cyberbully them. He then said that he had proof, so he pulled out a piece of paper from his desk and he showed me a photo of messages cyberbullying Alex and Jason through text. I was so astounded seeing this, and I told the headmaster that this was photoshopped. He then said to me that I had 24 hours to prove that this is fake, and if it's not, I will be suspended for 2 weeks. I had to think fast and take steps quickly. I took a picture of the paper and then left the office. At lunchtime, I went over to Alex and Jason. They were both sitting at the same table. I grabbed both of them and said that I needed them right now. They both squinted their eyes as they obviously didn't know why I needed them. I told them that Jack had spread a rumor that I was bullying them. They had such confused expressions on their faces as they didn't know what I was talking about. I then pulled out my phone and showed them the picture. After they saw the photo and examined it, their faces then turned to horror. Jason then asked me, "Why would he do something like that to you? What did you do to him?" "I simply didn't do anything," I responded back. He asked me to go out with him and I nicely rejected him, and I guess he didn't take so kindly to that. I continued on. I felt so disgusted saying this to them because it was just plainly embarrassing. Alex then said, "We need to go to the office now." We got to the headmaster's office, and both Alex and Jason declared that I was not cyberbullying them, and they then proved it by showing the headmaster the text message history between me and them, and our conversations did not show anything bullying related. The headmaster seemed to catch on to what we were saying, and he apologized for not believing me at first, and he also said that I'm clear and won't face any trouble. We all thanked him and we all left the room, continuing with our day. Later that night, I got an email from the assistant principal saying that Jack had been suspended for a week for spreading misinformation about me cyberbullying the other students. I was very joyful to hear this because I wouldn't have to run into him at school and be targeted for something I didn't do. Hopefully he'll come back more mature and just own up to his mistakes he made. Sad to say, this wasn't what I thought it was. The weekend then came and I was on my way home from dance class. This might be unnecessary, but I used to be a ballet dancer. Anyways, back to what I was saying. I was on my block walking alone on my phone when I was suddenly interrupted by a loud, "Hey!" I turned my head to see who it was, and to my fear, it was none other than Jack. I was so stunned to see him in my neighborhood. How did he even know where I lived? The school didn't allow handbooks for families, which they would have had home addresses on them, and my school was in uptown Manhattan, and I lived in downtown. I took a few steps back, feeling unsettled. I calmly asked Jack, "How did you even find me?" He then snapped at me and said, "So you're just not going to go out with me, huh? I was planning this ever since I first met you, and this is how you're going to treat me?" I was about to lose it, but I remained cool because I didn't want to make a scene. I said to Jack, "I wasn't even being mean to you, dude. You just overreacted when I said no, and then you spread lies about me which almost got me suspended. And now you're stalking me when I never even told you where I lived. You've gone way too far." He was still yelling at me, saying stuff like how I was being a dick to him and how I mistreated him, which I never did in fact do that. He then put his fists out like he was going to punch me. I started yelling for help because now I was being threatened. I was now running away and Jack was chasing me. I ran and ran until I got to the building I lived in. I saw the doorman, and that's when Jack ran away from me. He probably knew that he was going to get caught. I got inside and the doorman asked me who that kid was. I said this guy goes to my school and he was stalking me on my way home. He then asked me if he needed to get the police involved. I told him, "No, it's fine. I can handle this." And then I went upstairs to my apartment. I rushed inside and my parents were sitting at the dinner table. They saw the scared look on my face and they asked me what was wrong. I told them that Jack, the one who spread lies that I was bullying other kids, somehow knew where I lived and he followed me home from dance class. Both of my parents were so alarmed to hear this, and my mother said that she'll email the headmaster right away. It was hard for me to fall asleep that night knowing what happened just a few hours ago. I was afraid that he never left and is still probably in my neighborhood waiting for me to come outside. Monday then came, and before the day could even start, I was called into the headmaster's office. I was really wishing that it would be good news, and it was. Jack had been expelled from school. This made me feel at ease as he would no longer have to be following me everywhere I go, and he wouldn't be harassing me anymore. The rest of my middle school years went well and moved fast like the speed of light. I never had any stalker encounters ever again, and I hope it remains that way. I'll just say this for those of you who are about to be in middle school. Choose carefully of the kids you want to hang out with, and if you don't choose right, you might end up in a situation like I was in. If not, even worse. So please everyone, choose your friends wisely. All of this occurred a year ago when I was still in high school at the age of 17. To give you a little bit of background, I'm a white gay 18-year-old boy named Tyler who went to high school in a small town in South Louisiana. Most of the boys who attended this school were white, straight, and of course a little homophobic. No one was ever openly homophobic to my face though, but you know how small towns work. There was, however, one older guy I sort of looked up to. He was much older than me and he had graduated in 2015, but would always come by to the high school and visit. He was openly gay and black. He would be 100% himself and not afraid of what anyone else thought of him. It was the most heroic and attractive thing to me at the time. Everyone loved and respected him. His name was Gregory, and after paying a few visits to the high school a week, he ended up becoming the dance team coach for our school's dance team. And Gregory was the only boy on the dance team at the time he attended our school as well. At practice, he was very helpful and friendly toward me and the girls. He would like to make jokes about how the boys are always the better dancers on our high school dance team. At times, he made me feel like he saw something in me. almost as if he could see himself in me whenever I would dance at football and basketball games. I didn't have a car at the time, so I would walk to school and walk home from dance practice at night. Greg would eventually start offering to give me rides. "Hey sweetie, need another lift? I must start a taxi service, and I only pick up cute white boys," he would tell me. When I was alone with him on these car rides, these were the type of silly, inappropriate comments that he would make. At the time, I was young and naive, so it felt really nice to have attention from an older man who I idolized. It felt like we had a special bond. On our car rides, he would tell me his fun and exciting college stories. He would say, "At my university, there are tons of gay people. There are even LGBTQ clubs that you can join. I no longer feel alone now that I'm in college," he would say. He would even show me beautiful music that he enjoyed. I was really starting to become a Stevie Wonder fan. Our after-school car rides then turned into after-school hangouts, and before I knew it, Greg and I were hanging out every day. I had never been in love before, but this felt like love, but the age difference could never work. He was 25 and I was 17. It felt like Gregory was my forbidden fruit, the man I wanted but couldn't have, the fish I wanted but could never catch, the apple on the tree that was way too high for me to reach. As much as he meant to me, I knew that I could never have him, so I needed to do the mature thing and protect myself. I was approaching the end of my senior year of high school, and all sports were at an end, which meant that I would be seeing Gregory a lot less. I was in a weird place where it felt the best for me to just stop speaking with him. After all, we were just friends. I ended up ghosting him after our last basketball game. That was when things began to take a disturbing turn. I was in my world history class when I noticed a black hand wave quickly by the window. My desk was right near the window, so it was easy for me to spot. I thought nothing of it until I heard someone humming a song. It kind of sounded like Superstitious by Stevie Wonder. I then received a text from Gregory. It was a picture of him smiling outside of the school with a text message that said, "Hey, meet me in the boys' room. Let's hang out for a minute." At this moment, I recall thinking this would be normal if we went to the same school or even the same age. But it felt really strange that a grown man would do this to a high school kid. I was terrified, and I didn't know what to do until I heard my teacher then say, "Gregory?" My teacher walked over to the window and opened it. Out popped Gregory. The entire class laughed. Even the teacher laughed because that's just how Greg was treated. Like he was still this big goofy student who could do no wrong. But I saw something really wrong with this picture. "Gregory, what in the world are you doing by my window? I'm trying to teach history here," she said playfully. "Oh, just trying to find another way in," he joked as he climbed into the classroom from the window. The class and teacher got a big laugh out of this as he fit his fat ass through the window. Once he got into the classroom, he then turned to me and shouted, "Hi, Tyler," as he ran through the classroom. I could not believe it. That son of a bitch just got away with that. The reality then hit me. I was being stalked. That night, Gregory showed up by my window. He tapped at my window for about 13 minutes until I eventually opened it and let him in. "You're not sleeping alone tonight," he forcefully said. He locked my door and laid on the floor. "Go to sleep and let me watch." I cried as I went to sleep. When I woke up, Gregory had posted pictures of me sleeping in my bed with the caption, "Peaceful little Tyler." This is when the rumor started. In the mornings when I would show up to school, kids would say things to me like, "Hey Tyler, did you have a nice night with Groomer Greg? Hey Tyler, is Groomer Greg going to pay you a visit in class today?" Little did they know I felt tormented. One day when I walked home from school, I could see his car following me. He was driving slowly and a short distance away as if I couldn't see him. I then lost him when I got to my street. As I was walking into my house, I heard my mom's car door open, and out jumped Greg. He grabbed me. "Tyler, why did you stop talking to me? I thought we had a little thing going on." I told him there was nothing going on between us and to leave me alone because I was a minor. He then grabbed my face and put it right next to his. "What about when you turn 18, baby boy?" I jerked myself back and stared at him in disbelief. "You're a damn groomer, aren't you?" I asked. He then giggled and said, Oh, you thought you were the only one? You think you're special? How cute. He then did something I would never forget. He looked right at me and then started to sing a jingle.
Very young and delicious, Groomer Greg on the prowl.
Now, for anyone who didn't understand that, it's very young and delicious, Groomer Greg on the prowl. He then ran off and I ran inside my house. I told my mom what was going on and she told me she would inform the school. I begged her not to. I was about to graduate and I didn't want more rumors going around. I just needed him to screw off. That night, he had sent me an audio message of him singing that damn song. He also made a post on Instagram minutes after that of a shirtless mirror pic with a caption that said, "On the prowl." This guy was insane. A few nights later, I went to a party at my girl Jamie's house. Jamie told me that if Gregory showed up, he would be forced to leave, so I felt a lot better about going out. Don't worry, Tyler. I'm not having Groomer Greg show up, and if he does, he's leaving. After a few hours of drinking and fun, I went to the bathroom and checked my phone while doing so. I had a text from Greg sent 15 minutes ago. It was a selfie of him drinking at the party with Jamie and a few other girls. What the hell? I thought. How could he be here? Jamie wasn't supposed to allow this to happen. What a fake bitch. I walked outside where everyone was to ask my sober friend Amanda to bring me home. Hey, Tyler, Greg shouted at me from across the party. I ignored him. Oh, you're ignoring me? That's it. Time for a spanking. He then ran at me and tackled me to the ground. He took his wine cooler bottle, shoved it in my mouth, and made me chug it. I began to choke and gag and got beer all over my clothes. He then pulled down my pants and began to spank my exposed ass in front of everyone at the party. I screamed for someone to help, but everyone, including Jamie, just laughed about it. He then poured beer all over my ass and kept spanking me, then got in my ear and sang that stupid damn song again. I laid there and cried until someone brought me home. That was my last traumatic encounter with Groomer Greg. Since then, I've gone off to college and moved out of my hometown. It's safe to say things are much better, for now at least. It started one day back in 2021 when I was a freshman starting high school. I remember entering my second class. As I was grabbing my sheet, this dude, let's call him Sam, gave me a stare that made me really feel creeped out. He handed me a paper and I greeted him and said thank you. I didn't think of it as him hitting on me. I thought he was just antisocial. As days passed, he began to stare at me every day in class. He would get really close. Eventually, I got so irritated that I asked him what his problem was. He just smirked at me the entire time, and I felt so uncomfortable. I started to back away, but with each step I took, he continued staring at me like I was prey. Then he said, "Hey." I asked again, "What's your problem?" He didn't say anything. He just kept staring at me like I was some kind of prostitute. I ended up leaving. After class, it was time for gym. As I was sitting in my spot, my friend then said to me, "Hey, look over there. Who's that creepy dude staring at you?" As I turned my head, I saw him again. This time he didn't care that I caught him. He just stared and bit his lip while I looked at him in disgust. I told my friends how this one senior wouldn't leave me alone, and they said he was probably one of those super seniors who only wanted one thing, just like I suspected. Weeks passed and I did everything I could to avoid him, even if it meant failing my classes and missing school. There's a memory that I keep in my mind that still haunts me. I remember missing class for 2 weeks. One day I was walking a different route and I saw him with his friends. I tried to walk past him quickly. Out of curiosity, I turned around to see his reaction, and I saw him aggressively squeezing his bottle and clenching his fist tightly. He was just staring at me like he wanted to punch me. That moment will forever haunt me. I was just happy he was supposed to graduate. I thought I'd never have to see him again. From around 2022 to 2023, I didn't see him, but I was wrong. Around September or October of 2024, I heard from someone that he was back in town. I had hoped it was a lie. I told myself surely he wouldn't remember me. He never even spoke to me much. But on a hot October day, as I was heading to meet a friend, I walked past a park and I saw someone getting out of a car and slamming the door. He stared at me the entire time while smoking a cigar. I looked more closely, and to my shock, it was the same stalker from my freshman year. He looked older now, and even creepier than before. The way he stared at me was deeply unsettling. Something was just really off about him. I stood there dumbfounded. Then I told myself, the longer you stay, the more likely he'll come up to you. So I walked fast to the bus stop. As I got on the bus and sat in the back, I just kept telling myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he was just there by accident. Maybe he didn't even remember me. Eventually, I forgot all about it until I left my best friend's house and started walking the 10 to 15 minutes home. I walked past the car, the same one that I'd seen earlier. I got scared again. I saw him again. I tried to walk it off, but he had rolled down his window and started catcalling me. Then he sped off. My heart was racing. I felt violated, and I wasn't even wearing anything revealing. As days went by, I kept seeing two guys near my building standing on the stairs with binoculars looking into my window. I just knew that it was him and his friend. I opened my window and yelled, "Leave me alone! Go home!" Surprisingly, it worked. For a while. Months passed and I started to feel better. I hadn't seen them around, but just 2 days ago I saw them again. Now whenever I do, I just close my blinds. I hope that whoever's going through something similar can relate to this, and please be careful. So I'm in high school and I sit with a group of emo gay kids at lunch. A while ago, there was this one guy who would hang out with us. I didn't think much of him, just a skinny white emo kid. Until one day he kept saying he was black. He wasn't. He was completely Snow White. And he would make slightly racist comments to the point where he would point at someone and then say, "Look, a monkey." That was when we completely kicked him out from our lunch group. Fast forward up to recently, and he joined my ROTC class, which is basically military in high school. He makes dark comments all the time and dark jokes. Once there was a lockdown and we were all really scared, and he was sad that he didn't get to die that day. Meanwhile, I was ready to give up my life to save people. He said he liked ROTC and wanted to join the army because of the blood and violence. I also heard him joke about shooting up the school as well. He does this a lot, and it makes me very uncomfortable. I talked to my friend, and it turns out the other girls are uncomfortable as well. He keeps talking about death and dying and killing people. I need to talk to my flight leaders about him because I genuinely feel like he might do something. Update. He's officially been reported to my flight leader. I'm also going to tell my mom, who's a guidance counselor at another school. If I hear him mention something like this again, I'm reporting him to the colonels. Update 2. I just reported him to the police. I'll also be filing a report to my school about him. It's in the hands of the higher-ups now. I'm a 27-year-old female. I graduated from high school about 10 years ago. In my freshman year of high school, I was well known and I had lots of friends. I was very friendly, and every time I saw someone alone, I would greet them and offer them my friendship. Sometime during the year in my math class, we had a new guy. We'll call him Jose. Jose had recently moved to the US from Mexico, and he hardly knew any English. Me being Hispanic, I was able to speak to him in Spanish and make him feel welcomed. Jose had no friends, and he always sat by himself in school. In that math class, I had started helping out Jose a lot. He sat behind me, and he would always play with my hair. Not actually my head, but my hair, so I could hardly feel it. I sort of felt like he had a crush on me, and he wasn't bad looking, so I didn't really look at it as a big deal. For a few months, he had played with my hair. It became a norm. He said that he really liked my hair. Towards the end of those months, he said he wanted to play a game, and he asked me to write the things that I loved the most in life. He would do the same, and we would both share our papers with each other. Of course, I wrote down my family, God, friends, and a whole bunch of other things too. When I gave him back the list, he said that he wanted specific names and he would do the same. I ended up writing my friends and family's names. One day we were just hanging out in class, and then Jose said, "Can I show you something? But you can't tell anyone or else you're going to have to pay for it." I was confused. I thought maybe he would ask me out. Jose then pulled out a Ziploc bag, and I couldn't really tell what was in the bag. It wasn't until he placed it on the table and I noticed it was a Ziploc bag full of hair. "My hair," he said. Jose then pulled up his sleeve and showed his arm. He had about 10 healed knife scars that went down his arm, lines that were made with the blade of the knife. There was a fresh knife wound, and he then grabbed my hair and placed it on top of the freshly opened wound from the night before, and then he said, "You're mine now. I know who you love, what you love. If you don't do as I say, you'll pay for everything. These are all of the scars, and these are the souls that I own. Anything and everything that happens from now on, think of me." My heart sank. He started smirking. I ran out of the class crying and ran to the office. Everyone was so confused. I asked to speak to my counselor immediately, and I explained what had happened. Jose was pulled out of class, taken to the principal's office, and he was expelled that very day. I feared for my life after that. They found all these notes of other people in his backpack. Mine was there too. They saw the scars and they found my hair. I never heard from Jose again. I've had some pretty messed up crap happen in my life after that, and I always thought of Jose. I haven't talked about this in years. I'm afraid that if I mention this, he'll hear me and more bad is to follow. I got so close with God, closer than ever. Until this day, I don't know if Jose was just messing around with me or not, but I will tell you that after that encounter, I am no longer the super friendly and open-hearted person that I once was. Hi friends. So I recently came across some information about an old friend, which has left me, as the kids would say, shook. I figured I'd make a post to sort through my thoughts and share a rather insane story. But before we get started, my name is Mikey and I'm in my 20s. Also, I'd like to apologize for how overly sarcastic this post may seem. Humor is my defense mechanism. Trigger warning. The story mentions murder, but I don't go into much detail about it. Stay safe out there, friends. When I was an angsty teenager, I moved in with my mother and stepdad to escape a less than desirable situation. Because of the move, I was enrolled in a new school. The school was located in one of the sketchiest neighborhoods in the city. Everyone who resided in that area was relatively low income, my family included. We had a rec center near the school that was a hotspot for, let's call them undesirables, which was primarily teenage boys wandering from the nearby high school to catcall the girls. Lunchtime was my favorite. I loved going outside for chow and having sweaty teenage boys asking for the nasty. Note the sarcasm. Anyway, during my time at my crappy school, I had made an array of friends. However, there was one person who became my best friend. Let's call her Blondie. She and I got along like, what's a negative connotation? I was a people pleaser, and she took advantage of that. Blondie was nice enough, but she was problematic. Regardless, we were fast friends, and thus began our very short-lived friendship. Over the school year, she mainly came over to my house since I was an only child. We usually had the house to ourselves while my folks were at work. However, she had finally invited me to her house around the middle of the school year. I was super excited. I had always wanted to meet her family since they were always such an enigma. Blondie wasn't one to divulge information about her home life. All I knew was she lived with her mother, stepdad, and younger sibling. I'm unsure if she was embarrassed or didn't care to share, but I had finally had the honor of meeting them. Honestly, her family was amazing. They were kind and they treated me very well. Not to mention, her stepdad was a phenomenal cook. The best spaghetti and meatballs I've ever had. After that, I started going to her house more and more. And you know what? I really enjoyed it. Fast forward to a month or two before the end of the school year, and it's Blondie's birthday. Her family was throwing a little get-together at their house, and I was invited. Blondie and I headed to her house after school, and it was a really fun time, until near the end of the day. Now, I knew next to nothing about her biological father. I knew that he wasn't really in the picture. He'd sometimes drop by and say hello, but I'd never personally met him. That was until he had made a surprise visit to give Blondie a present. When I tell you there was a shift in the atmosphere, I kid you not. I could immediately feel it, and I was a dumb kid. We were inside the living room eating some cake, and there was a knock at the front door. Blondie's mom answered, and her face, which once had a nice smile, turned into a scowl. If looks could kill, the dude would be dead. She moved aside, and this man walked in. I'll never forget how everyone in the room got tense except for Blondie, who excitedly greeted her dad. At the time, he seemed like a normal-ish dude. Maybe a tad bit on the creepier side, but who am I to judge? Blondie introduced me to her father, and we shared some pleasantries. At one point, I was invited to go get ice cream with them the following day, which I accepted. I mean, I was getting free ice cream. Of course I was going to say yes. He eventually left, and we all got back to eating cake. I had honestly forgotten all about the visceral reaction everyone had upon seeing him. Maybe if I remembered, I would have said no. Anyway, the following day rolled around, and I went for ice cream with Blondie and her dad. I can't remember much from that day other than him asking me if I had a boyfriend or girlfriend, which seems innocent enough, but the way he had asked me made me feel weird. I honestly can't remember much from my other encounters with this man. Nothing really jumps out to me. I know that I went out with him and Blondie a few more times before my family moved to another city and we lost touch. Fast forward a few years, and I'm attending college. I had managed to stay in contact with one person from my middle school days. Let's call her Teddy. She had reached out to me one day asking if I wanted to go to a movie, which I happily accepted. I was balls deep in the big sad at the time and needed to pick me up. A film with an old friend was just what I needed. I took the train to a nearby mall, and Teddy and I watched the movie. After, we had headed to the food court and got some chow. We were catching up. It had been a couple of years since we last saw each other, when Teddy suddenly perked up. She asked me if I had heard about Blondie's father, to which I said that we hadn't been in contact since I had moved. Teddy's face lit up, and she told me the most mind-blowing story my little brain had ever heard. She informed me that Blondie's father had murdered a woman. Now, before I continue, she was going based on word of mouth while she was telling me all of the details. Teddy had no news articles or police reports to back up her story. She was told by a friend who heard from someone else, and so on. But what she told me wasn't actually far from the truth. According to her, Blondie's father had taken the life of a street worker. He got away with it for 2 years, and his truck got him caught. Apparently, there was something unique about it. Teddy couldn't tell me much more because, well, she genuinely didn't know. I remember going back to my dorm and trying to Google for more details, but I couldn't find a damn thing about it. I eventually forgot about the story until last year, which was 2023. I was discussing the craziest stories from my life with a friend when I suddenly remembered Teddy's story. After some digging, I finally found an article that described the crime. I clicked on it, and when I saw the picture of the man, well, words can't really describe what I felt. Everything Teddy told me was true, but it was so much worse than what she and I thought. Out of respect for the victim and her family, I won't describe what he did, but he was arrested 3 years after he had taken her life. I can't find any information about how he was caught, but it had something to do with his truck. He was charged with manslaughter, and he took a plea bargain, and indignity to a body, and only served 7 years of his 14-year sentence. He had served half already because he was in custody during the trial. I looked him up again not too long ago, and I learned some unsettling information which prompted me to write this story. He was released from prison a few months ago. Guess what he did? He killed another woman. From what I've read, it had similarities to the other murder he committed. This time around, though, he's charged with second-degree murder and indignity to a body. There's unfortunately still not a lot of information about the second woman, but both of his victims were mothers. They were both cruelly taken away from this world, and I still can't wrap my mind around this all. I met this monster. I was best friends with his daughter. I don't think I was personally in any danger, but the fact that I met someone capable of such heinous crimes, it scares the living shit out of me. I can't even begin to imagine how Blondie must have felt after learning of her father's crimes. Anyway, I apologize for the length of the story and how vague I was regarding the crimes. I'm sure some of you really want to know everything, but it didn't feel right to share their story, especially since it had little to do with me. I was just the schmuck that was friends with the daughter. Also, I would like to provide more information about how Blondie is today, but I can't remember her last name for the life of me. I just know that she doesn't share the same one as her dad. Regardless, thank you all for listening. This is something that happened to me when I was around 15 to 16. I, a 24-year-old female, used to be painfully shy as a kid, so I had a few small groups of friends that I was always around. My first day of sophomore year, I met this guy who we'll call Seth, who was around 18 to 19. I met him in one of the classes, and he seemed a little strange. I didn't think too much of it at the time because he seemed really nice. Finally, it was time for my favorite period, lunch. Lunch was reserved for my favorite people, two boys who accepted an awkward 13-year-old me after a dramatic move to my dad's home. One of the boys was actually my best friend and my first boyfriend. Let's call him Jay. So we were really close, and I trust him more than anyone else. The other, let's call him Harry, was in the same class with me where I met Seth. Anyway, I sit at our table and we begin to start comparing teachers when Seth randomly joins our table. I figured that he was one of their friends, so we just continued like normal. After a few weeks, I started getting a little creeped out by Seth. He seemed to be everywhere I went in the school and always stood way too close. If I asked him to step back, he would point out other guy friends who stood closer. It was usually the same two guys he would use as examples. For context, I'm in a wheelchair and he was very tall, so my head was the same level as that area. I eventually found out that he had seen what my school login was, and he saved it to his computer. Now, I didn't want to immediately freak out and report him, so I decided that I was just going to ask him to delete it. He said that he would, and that was the end of it. As the months went on, Seth started to get worse. The class we had was a film class where the students would go out during the period in groups to do the project independently. This was very scary because he would immediately claim me in his group, and I was too nice to decline until we were put in pairs. He always tried to get me to go film with him in the backfields behind our school. The way he would suggest it got me so scared that I would refuse to leave the room. My teacher was amazing and didn't ever force anyone to go out. He would end up doing it alone, and I would edit. While Seth was out, I decided to see if he deleted my login. He hadn't. He had at least 20 other logins saved on this document, and I was scared enough to report it to my counselor. My counselor was a complete idiot and decided to tell him that a girl in his class reported him. I found this out because the next day he had came to lunch and started accusing me, and he seemed really angry. I denied it, and Jay and Harry stuck up for me. It was shortly after this that I found out that neither of my friends knew Seth. He only knew of me when he joined our table. My counselor decided that my concerns were not important enough to notify our teacher or police. I guess it wasn't serious enough to warrant anything outside the school. They didn't even notify my dad. After everything that happened with the report, he went back to being creepy, but in a worse way. Every day he would try to convince me to go somewhere with him behind our school, and it had gotten to the point that he was trying to tell me I had to. He would make up excuses for us to go somewhere alone. I didn't tell anyone about it besides the school and my teacher later, because at the time I wasn't sure if I was just being crazy. I think my friends might have expected he was getting too pushy, because they had started walking with me to classes whenever they could. I ended up telling my teacher what was going on, and he immediately started assigning seats and talked to another girl in my class to see if I could permanently join her group. Seth had graduated at the end of that year and decided to resurface in my email inbox when I was 17 to 18. I blocked him.